Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Coffee with Tamara. That's me. I am really excited for today's guest, and let me tell you a little bit about why. And we were just having this conversation offline, actually. I know if you've listened to me for a while now, you've heard me talk about this before. We are living with a level of underlying stress that we've never lived in, I think, with as much as we are now. So I think this is the most I've ever seen us in my lifetime. I think we've had periods of stress before, kind of globally. I think now we're just stressed out. And more people that I'm seeing are living in this very reactive primal place because they don't even realize how stressed out they are, because it's not something like, oh, someone jumped out at me out of the alleyway. It's just life is hard, life is stressful, and there's so much chaos, so much uncertainty. So for that reason, I am really excited about today's guest. And I will tell you, our offline conversation, I was like, she is a sister from another mother, because we have all these same experiences and values that we didn't know we had when we booked the podcast. So it's kind of cool. So let me tell you just a little bit about Ashton August. She's the founder of youalign.com, which is a digital wellness magazine, which has just incredible content in it. She's an entrepreneur. She has 2 books. The first one, A Year of Self-Motivation for Women. And the second one, Learn, Grow, Shift. I love the name. And she's a van lifer, which I'm super excited to dig into today, because I think that's a whole way of being that I definitely want, but don't have yet. So with all that said, Ashton, welcome to the show. Why don't we just start with, just tell us about kind of you and how you ended up where you are today.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Tamara, for having me on. I'm so happy to be here. I felt the same way. I was like, oh, soul sister.
Yeah, right? Like, who knew? Who knew?
Love it. So how did I get here? So for the past decade, I have owned my company, which in addition to the digital magazine is also an online yoga membership platform, YA classes. And all of that started really with my background in writing. So I've first and foremost, before yoga, before entrepreneurship, I have been a passionate writer. And I always said when I was young that I wanted to be a magazine writer for Condé Nast because I love to travel. So it's cute how that kind of morphed into, I'm just creating my own magazine.
And do your own travel. So
exactly. Yes. And so I went to grad school at ASU and got my master's in creative nonfiction writing, which was such a fun journey. And during that same time, to the horror of my family, I got yoga certified. And that just kind of came out of nowhere.
They're like, what are you going to do with that?
My mom's like, master's, yoga cert, what's going on here? And actually then I just went the yoga direction. So they were like, oh, okay. That's how life goes though, right? And so the yoga piece was never planned. It just sort of fell into place because I was a passionate student of yoga since I was 19. And I discovered how, speaking of stress, how yoga was the first thing to ever give me a moment of pause, a reprieve from the anxiety. So I was immediately hooked. And so the dream for You Aligned, which originated as Yogi Approved, we did a rebrand a couple years ago. Yogi Approved was born for my love of yoga and my passion for writing. And I wanted to merge the two. And here we are 10 years later. So that's in a very quick nutshell.
So what I love about your story, Ashton, is that, and I hope everybody in the audience really hears this, it's because I have a degree in psychology, and then I went into advertising, and then into innovation, and then, right. So it all morphed. But, people will say to me, well, you're not using your psychology degree. And I'm like, well, but what I do is all about human behavior, actually. So it doesn't look the way I thought it was going to look. And maybe creative writing or, nonfiction writing, it doesn't look the way you thought it was going to look, but somehow it all kind of comes together in the end.
Yes, it truly does. And yeah, I thought au contraire about you, because everything you're doing, even with these interviews, right? It's psychology. I love how you call yourself a deeply curious human, and that's part of it. That's the psychology. You want to dig in. And you're so right, because in life, and I've been talking about this so much this past week, when we experience overwhelm, which is often, right? Because there's so much pressure and demands constantly. We start to feel like, oh my gosh, I am here. I'm at A, I need to get to Z, and I need to get there yesterday. And it can start to feel really daunting. Like, I'm never going to get there. How will I ever succeed? And really, when we take a step back, we look at the course of our life and say, everything has always worked out and fallen into place, even when in the moment it didn't seem like it was. Yoga, writing, what are we doing? And then slowly over time,
it comes together. So I think for everyone out there, know that the route is circuitous and sometimes it doesn't make sense, but somehow it all fits. So Ashton, I want you to unpack this for me because as I said in the beginning, and you just mentioned too, I think we're living as a humans in a state of overwhelm in a way that we have never, and as you know, just for kind of listeners out there, stress is meant to be a short-term response to threats, right? To the environment. It's not meant to be how we live. So it's really kind of eating us up from the inside out. Yeah. And one of the things that I've really struggled with as a free spirit wrapped up in a type A personality is
another soul sister connection right there.
It's like they fight sometimes. But the challenge is I feel like if I'm not taking action, then I'm being lazy or unproductive or not moving forward or right. Like and so sometimes the pause, which I know is extremely good for me, is hard for me to do. And it took me a long time to get over that hurdle. Will you talk a little bit about kind of why we do that to ourselves? Because we end up spinning our wheels when we do that because we're throwing shit against the wall. But also why that pause, like you said, whether that's yoga or meditation, or I know you talk a lot about breath work too, why those things actually work better than our natural inclination to just go.
Yeah. Oh, it's such an important conversation. We will spend 5 hours on this. So no. So this really boils down to the nervous system. And I love to geek out on this. I just finished writing my third book, which is all about mindfulness practices for anxiety. So I dig into anxiety through the path of our nervous system. And so when you speak of stress is meant to be short-term lived, yeah, the sympathetic nervous system is the fight or flight that told our ancient ancestors run from this saber-toothed tiger. But we still experience that same fight or flight sensation with things like traffic, getting a stressful email from your boss. So when we're put into these states, it takes our bodies a significant amount of time to kind of unwind back down from that because fight or flight releases cortisol and these other stress hormones to get you into that flight response, right? And so these moments of pause, of stillness, that's so challenging for so many of us. And I'm so glad you bring that up because not only is it for type A's like us, it's for women as a whole, right? Women are always taught, be everything for everyone else always without rest. And I've learned this lesson time and time again, being the stubborn woman that I am, that we can't pour from an empty cup though. And this is a big problem with our society. So yes, I relate to this so much as well. It's so hard to take that downtime and not have guilt or shame around it, or even just the shoulding yourselves to death of I should be doing X, Y, Z. But the radical realization is rest is productive. Rest is key to productivity. So that time off, that time down, yoga and meditation is fantastic. How about walks in nature too? Reading a good book, anything that kind of flips you into the opposite of fight or flight, which is rest and digest. That's the parasympathetic nervous system. And as soon as we activate that, it's called rest and digest because our parasympathetic nervous system tells the rest of our body, hey, it's okay, you're safe, you can relax. And now we release the counter to the stress hormones that help the body to physically relax all of its systems. And so we can reset. This is called down regulating.
Oh my gosh, I love this because I think this is such a challenge for so many of us. And it works against our natural inclination to be doing all the time. Do you find that, do you need a certain amount of time? Like if I'm in the middle of my day, I'm going to get real tactical for a minute. If I'm in the middle of my day and I can feel it, right? I can feel myself getting riled up, getting mad at an email that I shouldn't really be getting mad about, right? I can feel I'm yelling at my kids, whatever. Is 5 minutes enough? Do I need 20 minutes? Like what's the optimal way to think about this as a daily practice?
Ooh, yeah. Thank you for asking that. The good news is you don't need a long period of time. So sometimes even just 3 deep conscious breaths can be enough to reset the nervous system. In fact, if I may, this is a great opportunity to introduce one of my favorite breathing techniques. It's called the physiological sigh. Have you heard of that before?
No, go on. Look, can we try it?
Oh, yeah, definitely. So what I love about the physiological sigh is it is considered by science one of the most effective and fast acting breathing techniques for stress relief. That's what I love about it, number one. Number two, as you're about to find out, it takes very little time at all. And as long as you can breathe, you can do this practice. So let's try it. The way that it works is it's 2 inhales through the nose and then a full exhale out the mouth. Now, the exhale out the mouth, you'll act like you're blowing out a candle through pursed lips. And the inhale is 1 long, deep breath through the nose and then a shorter, sharper sip of air through the nose. Okay, so we're going to go for 3 rounds. Yeah, ready?
Okay.
And all of you who are tuning in, just find a comfortable seat, or you can do this standing. We'll take a deep inhale through the nose, a shorter, sharp sip of air through the nose. And now blow it out like you're blowing out a candle. Good. 2 more just like that. Deep inhale. Shorter, sharper sip. Full exhale. And last time through, here we go. Deep inhale. Shorter, sharp sip. And blow it all out. And then let's just take a moment to sit there and become aware. Notice. Do you notice any sensations or any shifts?
So I feel like my shoulders aren't so close to my ears. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I'm not as like tensed.
Well, that is such a good point because stress embodies itself physically in our bodies. So oftentimes stress manifests as the hunched shoulders, as clenching our jaw, furrowing our brows, or maybe all of it.
That's how I wake up in the morning sometimes. So fascinating because I felt like as I was doing it, like you could just feel the relaxation take over you. I don't know how else to describe it. Why does that work so well? And I've heard, I don't know if this is part of it, Ashton, but I've heard before that if you want to get excited, inhale more. If you're trying to relax, spend more time on the exhale. I don't know if that's actually true. I heard that somewhere. But why does this work?
That is such an interesting point to address that. I have not heard that before, but as I assess it, that makes sense because when we inhale, we're getting that, that kind of like hit to the nervous system. It's kind of a state of bliss. So a lot of breathing techniques that focus on like increasing your mood are the type of breathing techniques, whereas a longer, deeper exhale is always very calming. So I think that checks.
So why did this work so well? What is it about this particular method versus just, I don't know, regular deep breathing?
Yeah. So and regular deep breathing is amazing and is very effective as well.
Yeah.
This specific breathwork technique, as I mentioned, when we are mentally and emotionally stressed, it translates physically, right? Yeah. And so same with our breath. When we are in a state of fight or flight or stress, we are taking shallow little sips of air in the chest like this, and we don't even realize it. This breathing technique makes us take a full deep sip of air in and slow it down as we do. So that immediately slows down the heart rate. And it's basically just a domino effect of all the systems of the body being alerted. Okay, all right, now we go into down regulation mode. And that's why that combination is so potent.
I love it. So for everyone listening, like you just got a super insider baseball technique right here on minimizing your stress every single day. And I think what I really like about this is you can do it daily. Like what a great thing to do daily, but you can also just do it at those moments. Like you mentioned shallow breathing. I definitely, when I get stressed out, become a shallow breather and I don't even notice it. And then a half an hour later, I'm like, why can't I think straight? Because then that impacts the brain and I can't even like work,
And I do know you're right. And so many of us do that when you're thinking about if you're like in a heightened state of productivity, you're like, you're not, unless you're being mindful about it, which you totally can be. And you just made another great point. We're oxygenating the brain. So this is great for while you're sitting at your computer. Every time you think of it, give yourself that little check-in and do it. driving, at the grocery store, anytime where your nerves can get a little frazzled, take that breathing technique with you.
I feel like this is a good one for traffic. And funny
Yeah.
enough, like I can get very stressed out, but airports stress me out the
Ugh,
most. There's
I
something
know.
about airports that I really struggle with. My best self does not come out, but traffic doesn't bother me. Like I can deal with traffic,
Well,
but
good,
man,
because you live in Denver, the land of endless traffic. So
endless traffic now. This whole work from home really works for me because I don't want to be in traffic.
no, 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 no.
So that was so great. And I really appreciate sharing the tactical, like a real tip, because I think, de-stressing or, do yoga or just a lot of things that we talk about minimizing overwhelm are these very subjective, ethereal things. And I think they're really hard for us to get a sense of, well, what do I do every day? And I just to reiterate for everybody, really pay attention to what she's saying about the pause being so important. I have definitely found that since I've added meditation and yoga, and I've got some others I want to ask you about that I want to add into my routine. But since I've added those into my daily life, I am way more productive. I'm way more creative and innovative. My mood is better, and it's not. So I love a good cold plunge, but you don't have to do that to get those benefits. You can do these simple breath techniques. But again, for those of us who are kind of high achievers out there, which I know a lot of the audience, this actually makes you more of a higher achiever. So we think it's the opposite, but it's actually not. And I find, I don't know if you do this, but the days where I have the most to do is when I actually do a little extra, at least for me, meditation, because it just makes everything better through the day. And 10 minutes is not going to make or break my productivity. Like I'm not going to not get something done because I did 3 more breaths.
Well,
Right?
can I just get you in my brain for every day when I'm trying to tell myself otherwise? Like, no, I don't have time for this.
Right. There's so much to do.
But your mindset about it is so powerful and so important because it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
One of my favorite Zen proverbs is you should sit in meditation for 20 minutes each day, unless you feel like you don't have the time, and then you should sit in it for an hour.
Exactly. That is what I've come to realize.
Like if we're not prioritizing our own needs and self-care, everything else is going to fall by the wayside. And I'm not speaking on that from some conjecture. I have gone through total burnout twice, and it has cost me immense productivity, direct revenue, and like the state of my company. I've watched the difference. So
can you tell us a little bit about that? I don't want to brush over that without, because I think, I mean, I've experienced total burnout too, and it's a rough stage. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think this goes hand in hand with what we're talking about. So it's perfect that basically, I know we all associate the same meaning with burnout when we hear it, but burnout is defined by, burning the wick on both ends and functioning in that heightened stress state for a long enough period of time that you literally burn out, whether it's your adrenal glands, whether it's just your mental motivation and mindset, your actual energy levels. For me, it was all of the above, and it made me hit a mental rock bottom. And it was spawned from starting a company, a very real thing, which I just did an interview the other day where they asked me about work-life balance and what I believe about work-life balance now and how that has changed since 10 years ago when I started my company. And back then I thought, oh, you have the balance. You work this much, you have off this much, that's it. No, the balance comes in eras, in phases.
Yeah.
And it was in the startup era, and that's okay. But being younger and really driven, I was like, well, the harder I work, the quicker I'm going to succeed. It's not harder, it's smarter, right?
Yeah.
And smarter is taking the days off that I refuse to take off, is, stopping work at 7 p.m. like a non-negotiable instead of working till midnight and getting back up at 6 and doing it all over, So what I've learned from burnout is the best course of action for it is to prevent it to begin with. And the best way to do that is what we're talking about here, productive rest. Like you can still do the work hard, play hard mentality, but play hard isn't just partying hard on the weekends or pushing yourself physically on the weekends. It's rest. It's getting that massage. It's spending time with your loved ones and treating that like the priority that it is, scheduling it like you would schedule the meeting, the dentist appointment, so on and so forth.
Do you, how do I have like 3 questions in my head at once. So let me back up. So I'm just curious on your perspective on this too, as you're talking about balance. I mean, I'm 51, so I've had a lot of years of experience to realize like balance doesn't really exist in the way at least we used to talk about it.
Right.
And like with you, like I'm not okay. You leave work at 5, and then then it's this time, and then it's that time. To me, it's what I've realized along the way is that it's much more about, to your point, the eras, like what's your focus, but also presence. Because if I'm present and really engaged in my work in the hours I should be working, then I'm actually more productive and more innovative in fewer hours. And then when I'm with so I have 2 teenage boys. So when I'm with my boys, I'm present with them and not thinking about work. It's when I'm not doing anything 100%. That's when I get to really struggle, I guess, and then ultimately end up at burnout. So I'm curious if that's how you experienced it, or because then like it's all the open tabs in my brain all the time.
Oh man.
I
Yeah.
don't have those tabs open.
And I love the way you speak, because it's always these like really spot on analogies of all the open tabs, and I hear you.
So many.
So one thing that comes to mind for you is I hear that with certain aspects of your life, and this is good because a lot of people are like this, you are able to kind of tap in and show up in a way that feels healthy and balanced and intentional. And then there's other areas, like you said, the sort of miscellaneous, where it's just a free for all.
Yeah.
So what if during those miscellaneous times you invite in mindfulness, like the full blown practice of mindfulness, and just slow it down one task at a time and approach it with full mindfulness, like that's your job. And the reason I'm saying that is the definition of mindfulness is the act of being fully present for the task at hand. And the way that I first learned mindfulness was honestly through washing my dishes. And then again, with driving my car, 2 very mundane tasks that I have always been guilty of kind of checking out on. Like, have you ever driven somewhere and you arrive and you're like, oh my God.
You don't like, how did I even get here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So going from that extreme to the other of like, what does my steering wheel feel like? How much resistance is there on that brake and gas pedal? Can I tune into the sound of my blinker? How many shades of green can I see when I'm driving down the street? My point is, this is a very powerful way of bringing the chaos of your mind. In yoga, it's called the monkey mind, that incessant chatter, and just focusing it in on that one specific task. And I'll be honest with you, when I first heard about this, I was like, so for what? Like, what's the end goal? You know, I could just nod. And
How do I win this competition?
Exactly. But the way that you win it is through those times of mindfulness, because I've come to view them as this is another extension of my meditation practice, where insight and clarity and answers to my questions can come through, because I'm not, for once, doing this, phone call, doing the laundry, holding the baby. You know, it's like, this is everyone. I only have 4 babies myself, but that's the difference. Is it's mindfulness is essentially a cheat code to getting that productive rest in, no matter the task at hand, as a way of buffering against burnout.
So it makes me realize, so I started doing this thing, and I think it's what you're talking about, and I didn't realize it. I've got a lot of dogs, and I know I love dogs. I like dogs more than I like humans sometimes. I just love my dogs.
Sorry, guys.
No, sorry, everybody, but dogs are the best. I mean, talk about forcing you to be present, right? Dogs are great for that. So, but I take them for walks every day because they need their walks. And what I used to do is I used to have my headphones on all the time, and I'd be texting and podcasting, like listening to stuff. So all the stimulus was still coming in, even though I'm out walking in the neighborhood. And I'll never forget, a neighbor of mine, as I was walking by, was like, he's this older dude, and he's like, man, you younger generation. I was like, funny that he called me younger, but he's like, you younger generation, like you're addicted to your devices. And I kind of got a little ruffled. I was like,
yeah.
But then I started to realize that he's right. So I started to leave my phone at home, and then it was just me walking. And at first my head trash was all over the place because it didn't know where to focus. But then I started to do what you were saying, which is I started to look at the leaves on the trees, the gardens in the neighborhood, the whatever, right? The stop sign, like whatever. I just would focus on whatever I saw. And these walks became a real reprieve for me. And I really try not to miss them. I rarely miss it because it just centers everything. But I think it's what you're saying, which is mindfulness. So those listening, Like all you got to do is go for a 5-minute, 10-minute walk without your phone. It's really not that hard to achieve. But to your point, pay attention to the things around you. Don't get stuck in the head trash, which is what I did the first week.
Yeah. Ooh. So love that you've discovered your nature dog walks. Me too. It's my daily morning ritual, a non-negotiable. Yes.
Yeah, they're the best.
Yes. And I love that that's a place for you to do your mindfulness. It's perfect. And I too will now leave the phone after a neighbor basically said the same. She said, I see you out every day. I've never been able to say hi because you're always on your phone. Oh, I'm like, yeah, girlfriend, this is where I get all my texts and phone calls in. But it was shocking. And to your point, that's the gift we can give ourselves, is that moment to unplug. And if it feels really daunting or scary to do that, then I would lovingly encourage you to do it all the more. The other benefit of this, in that mindfulness walk where you are looking at the stop sign and you're noticing the texture of the leaves, you've probably heard, and everyone tuning in probably has heard, when they say, if you're having acute anxiety, stop and contact each of your senses. So identify a shade of red, feel a texture on your skin. What do you smell? And that mindfulness is another way to put us back in our bodies, because the final piece I want to share on this is when we have stress, when we have anxiety, when we're dealing with the head trash, another term I love, what this all is it's taking us into the past where we're mulling something over. We're worrying about something in the future. We are not here. We are not here in our bodies. We are not in the present moment. We are not present for our loved ones. We've all been out to eat where there's a whole table full of people that are on their phones, and it is a creepy, creepy sight.
Yeah. And it's so sad. It makes me sad for those people. Like, you're right there.
Yeah. Like, just reach out. And
so we got a question in real quick from, I think it's Allison, who said, you mentioned that you can do mindfulness while doing dishes. Can I do mindfulness while doing my chores like dishes, laundry, cleaning?
Yes, please, Allison. What I love about any chore that you're going to do with this is become immersed in the task as if you've never done it before, as if you are an alien who just got transported onto Earth and you're holding a towel. Like, what is this? But the difference is, right, you're going to engage in the folding of the towels. You're going to notice the suds on the dishes. And why should we care? Because this is giving you that moment of pause while you're still being able to be productive.
Yeah.
So give it a try and then come back and comment on this video, because we want to hear how it goes, what challenges came up, what you loved about it.
I'm going to do it while doing laundry, because also I hate laundry. So I think maybe this will help me have a new relationship with my laundry.
You know what? I have a giant pile that I was going to start after this call. So why don't we all do the mindful laundry challenge today, ladies?
I've got a dryer that just finished. So I'm in.
She's in.
I have so many questions. We're going to have you back because we're already like halfway through. I can't even believe it. But I want to ask you about a post that I saw on your Instagram where I think it was your mother-in-law, right? I think that's who it was, started doing this legs up the wall thing. And then you were inspired to try it. So I want to hear about that experience and what you got out of it.
Yes. Big shout out to Karen. That's my mother-in-law. She's actually one of the people that was responsible for getting me into yoga, getting me to start teaching yoga. She's always done yoga since.
Shout out to her.
I know. Shout out to Karen. So anyway, I was over at her house and she was doing legs up the wall and she said, I'll be down in 15. I do this every day for 15 minutes. And I was like, Karen, I'm starting this immediately. So I did. I have a lovely community with my yoga app, and every week we do a weekly meetup. And so I told them that meetup, and they all did it with me. So it started this thing where I said, I'm going to share this out and look at the blessings, because now we're talking about it here. And now this audience gets to hear. So legs up the wall, kind of self-explanatory. It's a yoga pose where you lay with your back on the floor and then you put the back of your legs up against the wall. And so you're resting with your legs up against the wall. The bottoms of your feet are facing the ceiling. This pose is the king of stress relieving yoga poses. Not me. That's what everyone says in the yoga space. So the reason why is it activates the parasympathetic nervous system, like we've talked about. So it's that down regulation, that activating the rest and digest. So huge right there.
Yeah.
In addition to that, it reduces inflammation. So it's really good for all forms of inflammation, reversing the blood flow down the extremities into the core of the body once more. So we're increasing our circulation. This posture feels so good. I crave it.
So I can't wait. I'm going to try it. I'm going to do it for 30 days because I'm super intrigued by it. And I saw somebody at the airport. I travel a lot. So I saw somebody at the airport doing it the other day, and I just thought they were just comfortable. Like they were just on their phone. I was like, maybe they're doing it intentionally because you can kind of do it anywhere. Um, is it like when you're doing it, are you just sitting there? What are you doing? Like, is it just a mindful moment where you just sit and rest and like do some breath work?
Yes, it absolutely can be. That's what Karen does. She literally lays there with a hand over her heart and a hand over her stomach and breathes deeply for 15 minutes. Sets a timer and just checks out. I do that sometimes. I've started incorporating this every morning because it just feels so good to get up and do first thing in the morning for me. So honestly, I will read my book. When you have a really good book and you don't want it to be done, so you kind of nurse it, but you can't put it down.
Yeah. Yeah.
I only read that book during my legs up the wall. So I only get 15 minutes with it every day. But you know what? If you want to send out a couple text messages or make a phone call, fine. If it gets you doing legs up the wall, you can truly do whatever you can do laying down. All you need is a blank wall. And if you're on like a tile surface, I recommend rolling out a mat if you have it, otherwise a rug or a blanket. And a couple quick pointers that have come up. Because as I mentioned, I shared this, it became a thing. A bunch of people started doing it with us. It's been so great. At the end of the first month, I said, I'm going to do a new pose now. That lasted 2 days. And I said, we're back to legs up the wall. This is just continuing for another 60 days now.
Oh, I don't know what just happened. Okay, there we are.
Okay, great. Hello, everyone. So I got asked a couple things that are important. First, someone said, you know what? I'm in it 5 minutes. I love it. After that, I can't wait to get out. Then get out. That's fine.
Okay.
5 minutes is still the full benefit. Another thing that people experience is tingling sensation in their feet or maybe in their whole lower body after they come out of the pose. This is common, totally normal, nothing to worry about. That's actually the blood flow. So you're actually feeling that. The final thing I get asked is, how do I come out of it and what do I do after? When you're laying with your back up, with your back on the floor and your legs against the wall, just bend your knees, pull your knees into your chest, pull to one side, take a couple breaths there. Couple breaths just to reset, come up slow. You might be lightheaded at first and then go about your business. This is a great pose to do before bed as well. So
I'm super excited. I'm super excited to try this because I can like innately I can see how it benefits, and you're on your feet all day, and to actually kind of be a slightly inverted. And I've heard about the benefits of being inverted overall. And when I do CrossFit, and so we do handstand push-ups a lot, but just being upside down feels really good. So this isn't fully that, but I like the idea of it. And I'm very curious to see this whole conversation about rest and digest. I love that phrase that you used, and just the idea of rejuvenation being part of your routine and not something that you hope happens every now and again in a very easy way. Because I think part of the reason why we tend to avoid those type of things is we don't know how to do them in a way that isn't like go get a new membership to one of those places with the cold plunge and the pressure things and that's all great, but for most of us that's a little bit out of our day to day.
Exactly. And how many memberships do we want to take on and pay for? And sometimes self-care can get to the point of it's actually becoming a detriment because we're taking on too much. We're driving to too many appointments and So I'm all about the free, do it anywhere at your house. Yes.
Well, I think your membership community is one to join since we're talking about memberships. I'm gonna flip gears for a minute because there's some things kind of more about like you and life that I want to make sure that I get in. Absolutely. So first of all, I want to ask you about van life because you said in your bio it says vanlifing, like when you're not doing all this right, you're vanlifing. So will you talk about what that is? And then I've got, as you know, a myriad of questions for you because I find this whole concept so intriguing and it's on my list of things to make happen. So we're going to dig in a little bit.
Yes, I love this topic. So let's dive in. Yes, I van life with my husband. We are on van number 3. We've been doing this for quite some time now. And as I mentioned to you right before we went on the air, my husband's name is Tyler, and he now builds out vans on the side because he loves it so much. So the first van that we had was actually for our company. And quick backstory, or do you want to jump into questions about
please.
it?
No, go ahead.
Okay. It's a fun one because it's such a statement of life and how something that seems like a terrible tragedy in the moment can sometimes become a major blessing. We had our warehouse in Denver, and I know that's where you're based, in Rhino. And that's where we filmed all of our yoga videos. And we always flew our teachers in to film with us in our warehouse space. And we rented the warehouse. Unfortunately, we're not able to buy it. And we got kicked out. The landlord one day came to us and said, "We're kicking you out at the end of this month." And we were shocked. We had built such an amazing community and we were devastated to lose it. But we didn't have a choice. So as we're getting ready to move out, one of our friends who had a business in the warehouse was also being kicked out and ended up needing to sell off all of her gardening company's assets, one of which was a van. It was an empty van. And so Tyler said, well, since we lost our warehouse space, why don't we get this van and we'll drive to the teachers to film with instead of flying them out to us. That's how
I love it.
Yeah. So totally random, fell into place, didn't really expect it. But you know what? We did a first summer, 3 months. That's when we went up the California PCH coast. Beautiful, beautiful. And we became totally hooked. And so Tyler built out this whole van, you know, the bed, the kitchen, the refrigerator, the whole 9 yards. And he realized, oh my gosh, van life is becoming really popular. This van is now worth so much money. I think I'm going to try to sell it. And if I can, I'm going to buy another one and do it again. And here we are in van number 3.
So that's so cool. And so the other thing, so I love it. I think part of the reason why I wanted you to talk about it is, to me, the fact that you do it is really, it's impressive. And I think it's impressive because we all have things in our life that we want to do. And oftentimes that centers around experiences, travel, van life. I don't know, living, you know, in a new city for a couple months, like all these kind of things. And I think it takes a lot of courage and prioritizing yourself a little bit to actually go out and do it. It's actually easier than people think it is to make happen, but there's all these reasons, right? Or excuses, I guess, that hold us back. But you went out and you did it. And yeah, it was a little serendipitous how it happened, but now you do it all the time, right?
Yes. And it was totally serendipitous, which I love about life. And also we were met with a lot of like, really, you guys are doing this? Like, you don't have the time to take off, or, you know, just, it's interesting. You're right. The script that people start to run of like why it's not possible or why they couldn't possibly. And listen, I get that we all have our own unique set of circumstances and responsibilities and all of that. And life is short and tomorrow is promised to no one. And I know that we hear this all the time, but, you know, I truly, after having some big losses in the recent years of people that were way too young, I'm just like, you know what? Life is too short. And the priority is helping people, being of service, and living your life, not working to live.
Wait, say that one more time, those 3, because those were so good. Was it helping you be of service and living your life?
And living your life, not waiting to live or working to live.
I love that. And I hope that everyone listening gets a little inspiration to try something. And I would encourage maybe to think about, okay, maybe they're not living in a van for 3 months, you know, off the, you know, Pacific Coast Highway, although that speaks to me. But
you're doing it.
Maybe it's small things. Like a couple weekends ago, we went up Gray and Torrey's, the 14er. And of Idaho Springs and over in that area. And it was so beautiful and so amazing. And we had no cell phone reception, which was wonderful. Like, so wonderful, magical. Yeah. And the view is so amazing when you get to the top. Like you can't get that anywhere else. But my point in that is saying is, okay, I didn't have a month to go live in a van, but I had a Sunday that I could make happen. Now, of course, when my alarm clock went off at 3:00 in the morning, because you got to get up there so early to be like all the people, so early. But when my alarm clock went off at 3:00 in the morning, in my head, I was like, I have so much to do today. Like if I spent today working, I'd be so ahead of the week. But then I was like, don't do it tomorrow. Like you really need this experience. You need this to reset. Your kids need it. Like we need time together. So just a reminder to everybody, it doesn't have to be 3 months out of the gate. It can be a weekend, a day. You know, it doesn't have to be, I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. I think we can start small and work our way to the big thing. I think sometimes what holds us back is, you know, we're at point A and we want X. But that's a huge leap. So if we just started with B, C, and D, eventually we'll get there.
And that is mindfulness in a nutshell too, is let's like stop on and savor C. And then take time moving to D, and trust that we'll get to X. But for now, like all those other letters have a time and a place. And
I like that. I had never thought of it that way. You're so right.
Yes. And also, yeah, you're right. I mean, I would even go so far as to say maybe that day is more ideal than the 3 months, right? Is like, again, making it realistic, making it attainable, and making it enjoyable. Because you know what? 3 months might not even sound good to everyone. It doesn't sound good to me anymore.
Right.
I don't want to do that again. And the people who have bought our past vans, they're doing it because they want to go out for a weekend here and there. They're like, it doesn't have to be this extreme thing. I love seeing how people make whatever it is their own. And yes, if it's an afternoon, do it. If it's an hour to take yourself out on a solo lunch date, do it. Whatever it is.
Love it.
Find yeah.
I really real quick want to say thank you, because what you just said about like savoring B and C and D, I hadn't even thought of it that way. In my head, I was like, so you can get to X, right? But I'd forgotten that you got to savor the steps in between, the letters in between. So thank you for that, because I absolutely enjoyed that Sunday where we went up, and we've got a whole nother one planned because we loved it so much. And it's funny, we live in Denver, and you forget how easy it is anywhere you live. I think this is really true, to go out and explore in your backyard. It doesn't have to be that big, but I had forgotten about how important that is to do, and how important it is to savor that as I move to, as we want to buy a van. So my husband and I, so we are like on the edge of doing it. So I'm super excited about it, because I like that life just speaks to me. The idea of just getting off the grid occasionally, even if it's for a weekend, to your point, to me is so, I don't think as humans we do it enough. I mean, we are actually as a species built to be of nature more than we are. And I can't remember, you saw the stat. I can't remember what the stat is, but it was something like we used to spend 85% of our time, I think it was 85% of our time outdoors as humans. And now we spend 95% indoors, I think, right? Yeah. Something like that. Like that can't be good for us.
No, it's not at all. And I'm a big fan of earthing or grounding, which is the act of literally putting your bare foot or skin on the earth. And I was including that in my last book. So I wanted to do the research of like, what's the science behind that, so I can speak to that. Yeah. It's the earth's ions. It's the earth's like ionic charge that goes into your body and recalibrates your cells. And, we used to not only be outside so much more, but usually barefoot or, sitting on the earth directly or whatever. And the fact that we're cooped up all the time, and then when we do go outside, we're on asphalt, we're wearing shoes, there's so much power in. So when you do your next 14er, take your shoes off at the top.
Okay. Oh, I hadn't even thought about that, because I do grounding in my backyard.
Oh, amazing.
I'll go out for 5 minutes with some coffee in the morning, but I hadn't thought about it like when I'm out doing that. So cool. I love that idea.
Yeah. And the final thing I want to say, and then we'll end going, because I know we have so much more ground to cover, is when it comes to the really cherishing B, C, D, it's so important for us to remember that when we hear that cliche phrase that life is a journey, not the destination, X is that destination. But once you get there, you're immediately going to be met with a new X. It's that proverbial pot of gold at the bottom of the rainbow. You're always going to keep going for the next. And so when we're instead savoring the B and the C, that is life. And so many people go through life constantly chasing the X, never being present for the letter that they're on.
Great. It's like, that's such a huge, powerful reminder. So for all of us, thank you for that, because I really, I'm really good about being mindful in these small moments, but I'm not as good as because I'm very goal oriented. I'm not as good at and I'm very good about being present, but not as good about savoring those moments in the journey to get to the goal. It's probably the way to describe it. So that's good. I
think it can be a both and. I think that you're allowed to be, highly motivated, goal oriented achiever, and be mindful in your little day-to-day. So that's your homework.
That is my homework. And I'm going to do the laundry challenge afterwards. I'm going to be mindful in my laundry, because
and then she's going to be in legs up the wall tonight. Like, okay.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. It's 30 days, and then I'm going to post about it. It's going to be so good.
I cannot wait to hear.
I'm so excited. So I wanted to ask you about life lessons because we started this conversation offline about things that like these are things that you absolutely should do in life. And I think one of them was travel for a year, which I want to hear about your experience. I did the whole backpacking during college through Europe with friends for 3 months. It was like the best experience of my life. Went
Love
through all the
that.
countries. And the other thing we added to the list when we were talking was live in a big city. But let me back up for a second.
Yeah.
Talk to me about like this life stuff. What are you thinking?
So off air, when we immediately were like, oh my God, we're sisters from another mister.
Do I know you?
I don't even remember how it came up now because we were immediately like, but it was on the topic of, everyone should do XYZ in order to really step into their adulthood with worldview and with, like a wide perspective. And that is traveling a year before college, if you choose to go to college, or, traveling a year post high school.
Somewhere young.
And it's because so often we graduate high school, we immediately jump into college or a career or whatever it is. And it's like, wait a second. You're still so young though. You're just a baby. And do you really know what you want to do? And even if you do, that's great. Take a year to go live. Because like we've been talking about, life will just, I'm 35. I was 20 last year. It feels like.
Girl, trust me, I'm 51. I'm like, wait, did Star Wars just come out? Isn't it still the 80s? What the hell? Like,
listen, I'll be 51 tomorrow. So I'm like,
you know what? The other day I literally, and I don't mind growing older. Like that part doesn't bother me, but I did have a moment the other day where I woke up and was like, oh my God, I'm 51. Like I'm 51. Like it's just,
when did it happen?
Yeah. When did it all happen? Like, I just don't even know where and how I got here. But to your point about it, right? Like do it and do it young. And it's the time to do it. You can do it very inexpensive, right? You don't have to live large. You have no real responsibilities. You think you do, but you don't.
No.
Like it's the time.
It is and don't fall into the trap of thinking you do. Because I remember being 18 and 19 and being like, oh, I know everything and everything matters so much right now. No, nothing matters. Go out and live your best life.
And you know what? Whatever crisis is happening in the world will come back around in 10 years anyway. Whatever situation where like all the shit comes back around, it's cyclical. And you don't realize that until you get older. But, having now been through a couple inflations, a couple recessions, it all comes around. You'll be okay.
And that's a really good view too, that I'm met with more and more, because it's easy to say like everything that's happening is the worst it's ever been. And in many ways, I do believe that. But when you do speak to someone from an older generation who's like, oh, honey, trust me, like time and time again, you're going to see this. And so you're even saying that now. And yes, you're so right. Like, don't let the state of the world stop you from doing things either.
And you know what? I just real quick, I'll say in that is, you can always find a reason to let other people decide how you're going to live your life. I think while we are living in times that are more uncertain and more stressful than they have been in my lifetime, I think if you ask my grandmother, who's a survivor of the Holocaust, she would tell you otherwise, like that was more. And I think she's, in her experience, correct.
Yes.
And we have more opportunity to do what we want to do in the way we want to do it. Now, I mean, we're having this podcast interview, right? Like, I make money off a podcast, a personality assessment. You have a online digital magazine and a yoga like membership. Like and you van life. Like there's so many more opportunities now, even with all this, to do it the way you want to do it than ever before. So I talk a lot about the stress and the anxiety because I want people to kind of come down from that, but also times are amazing in a good way too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like both can be true. It's such a both and world. And, we all are familiar with the heavy and the darkness of it all. And you're right. The other side of the coin is there's so much accessibility for us currently. Writing my mental health book, my mindfulness for anxiety. One of the questions I get asked a lot, so I asked and then answered in the book is, why do we hear about anxiety and other mental health issues so much more frequently now? Like, why is it so much more prevalent? Well, I think it's twofold. It's what you just said. These are incredibly stressful times. Yeah. Also, we're more connected than ever, where we, are aware of more than ever, which is the benefit of it's finally being normalized. It's finally being talked about. Perhaps we've all had anxiety for longer than it's been diagnosed, and now we're coming around to talking about it.
That is so, so true. I hadn't even thought about that. You're right. I mean, we have information at our fingertips in the way we have never had. I'll tell you a very funny note on that. My husband and I recently got into pickleball. I know it's like somewhat embarrassing, but we can't help ourselves. We're so addicted. And we're like, how old and suburban are we? Oh my God. But it's great. It's really, really fun.
I didn't have to.
Oh, it's so bad. I know. We were the people who laughed, but at first, and now we're like,
Now you're like
signing
really
up for
serious.
competitions. It's unhealthy.
I
But my
did
point,
it for the
what's
first
that?
time recently, and now I get it. I get it. With Karen, actually, who we now know, and I do quite enjoy it. So I can't make fun of you anymore. Continue.
It's the best. It's the best. And the reason I got so excited about it and know how to play is because of YouTube and TikTok. And so my point in that is there's something out there for everyone, and you can get access to it, and you can talk about it, and in a way that just wasn't possible even 10 years ago. So kind of to your point about the connectedness. I'm joking, say jokingly about pickleball, but really, like, I would have never gotten involved in this whole community had I not looked at some YouTube videos and realized what was going on, because I had no idea.
Had
So
you not had the access to
yeah.
learn about it and to see it. Yeah, totally.
And that's what you give people, right? Access to meditation and yoga and breath work in this way to kind of live in a more centered life, I think, because it's not just about doing yoga, right? It's about all the holistic benefits that come out of all of this stuff.
Exactly. Yes. And that's what I love about what I've created with this app and this community is people ask all the time, well, why would I pay for a membership when there's free content on YouTube? And it's like, no, exactly. There is. And that's great. And I have my own YouTube channel too, because if you want it and you can't afford it, I want you to have it. There's access there. But the benefit of this app is that it allows these offerings to be curated. You don't have to vet all these different instructors or go through all these different YouTube channels. It's all in one place. And it's all very highly trained and experienced teachers that bring it to you in layman's terms and that make yoga accessible for those who haven't done it before, and meditation and breath work and other practices, barre, Pilates. So it's been a really cool journey to watch that app become itself and grow.
Yeah.
And like I birthed my baby. There it goes.
The world. Here's what I want to say about that, though, because I have a lot of content online for free too. I mean, the podcast is free for listeners. Free is great when you're exploring and trying to figure out if something is right for you. I think that's the time to go free. But what I have found in my own world across the board on anything I've been a part of or wanted to learn, or a community or a technique, a skill, is that you hit a wall where it's time then to find the right membership or the right program or the right coaching, whatever it is. So I would encourage you out there, like, go for free to Ashton's YouTube so you can get to know her. I mean, I think we are on this. I feel like I've known you my whole life, but that aside, like, I feel like we're all getting to know you here, but go to the YouTube, right? And check it out. I just said the YouTube, by the way, like, how old am I? Go to YouTube.
Use the Google.
The YouTube. Go to the Facebook. That's what my dad
Have you
says.
seen that? Oh yeah, totally. I was just about to say that. The Facebook.
I sometimes like, wait, I swear I'm not that old. So, but go to YouTube, like, check it out. But then, like, you'll see, oh, this is for me. And then I would go and I would explore the actual memberships in the magazine and the community, because I think you get so much more at that level than you do at the free level. You just do. And it holds you accountable in a different way. And there's a lot of benefits to it. So I want to say that to people, because I think there's a lot of myths around free versus paid that as an entrepreneur drive me a little bit crazy, because I put a lot of content out there because I want you to have something, right? I want you to get a win out of the gate. And I want you to be able to know, is what Tamara talks about for me? But there is a level where you just got to take it. You got to invest.
I thank you. And it's really well said. And I love the outside perspective. I can speak on it all day, but to hear the outside perspective chime in is really beneficial. And I agree. I teach a lot of teachers. I teach like the business of yoga, the business of online entrepreneurship. And that comes up all the time, is this topic of free versus paid, and what to give for free, and then when to ask for, and I can go on and on about that. But I want us to circle back. Thank you for that. I would love
for the life lessons, because we totally got derailed.
Yep.
Yeah.
Everyone, please check out the app. But for now, we got to bring it back to the life lesson.
Yeah.
So
good call.
We did the travel.
Yes.
The next one is, and I've said this as someone who worked in a restaurant or bars all through high school and college, work in the service industry or retail for a year, because that's going to help you be kind to other people and not be such a
Truth. So I worked in retail and restaurant,
Okay, great.
and my dad had a resort when I was a kid, so I grew up at like the front desk. But
Okay.
also, I made my oldest, his first job was at Chick-fil-A because I was like, you were working in food service. Like, I know it's going to suck a little bit. And Chick-fil-A was great. They're a great company to work for, but it's fast paced. People are rude. They have the most ridiculous requests. Like, people come up and they'll say to him, he doesn't work there anymore, but they'd say, I'd like to get the mac and cheese, but without the cheese. And he's like, do you want noodles? Like, I don't, but it taught him to be nice to people.
Right. Oh my gosh. I
You're
can
so right about that.
It's such a good point. And yeah, it helps you deal with people. It helps you learn how to have communication, nonviolent communication.
Yeah.
So that's number 2.
Okay.
And then let's see.
Travel, food service.
Yep. And then did we write them down, the other ones? Because these were ones that we just came up with.
So the one that we talked about was living in a big city, or at least for a short period of time.
Yes, love that one. And that was the one that I was saying that has to get added to my other 2. So yes, mine is the travel around the world. Oh, no. We do have another one. Sorry, guys. Sorry. Oh. This is replacing PE in schools
Right.
with yoga. So instead of dodgeball, kids are learning how to stretch and move their bodies and gain strength, but in a way that is mindful and not traumatizing.
So on that note, real quick, there was I don't know if you heard about this. There was a PE teacher in Florida. This is a while ago now. It's a study that he did, and he did 0-hour PE. And so basically he was in an inner city school. They couldn't really afford PE. And PE teachers aren't the top of the ladder in the education system. And it's a hard job. And he did it. This goes back to what you're saying about yoga, but he did it as a 0 hour, so before school. And he did it where it was individual. It had to do on heart rate, like you were trying to get to 70%. So it didn't matter if you could run fast, like Bobby on the football team, or if you were, a 15-minute mile. What mattered is if you were working at a certain level for you. So it took out that weird competitiveness out of PE.
Yes.
What they found is with his program is that it decreased physical altercations in the school, grades went up, issues went down. So kids were concentrating more. So there are all these benefits to it. So I mentioned that because as you're talking about that, I'm thinking, wouldn't that be cool if school started to do a 0-hour yoga, like where they started the day with that yoga practice and that intention? I'd be very curious to see the outcome of that across schools if kids actually did it every single day.
I would love to get it to the point where that's established and we can do studies to show the results. And I am hopeful it will get there. I have one of my dearest friends lives in Denver. And back when I lived in Denver, we teamed up to bring yoga to her elementary school. She was a psychologist. Yes. And we called it Project Peace Corner. And so anytime a child was feeling overwhelmed or overstimulated or was acting out, instead of going to the principal's office, or getting reprimanded, they would be sent to the Peace Corner to practice a couple yoga poses. And at the end, she interviewed them all and asked, how it was. And we were literally crying reading the results because they were saying things like, helped. Yeah, it was beautiful. So I would love to see that continue. I do have some of my teachers for YA classes that offer this sort of program for their schools around the country. So it's starting. And the final thing I'll share, I know you'll find this fascinating.
Yeah.
Is there was a study done in Washington, D.C., and this was at least 25 years ago. And at the time of the study, D.C. was the murder capital of the country. And they brought in a group of meditators who meditated every day in the city for 30 days. And the rate of violent crimes plummeted.
Interesting.
And so they're seeing this across the board. It's kind of like the 100th monkey principle, where once a kind of critical mass happens of a certain amount of the population does this, daily meditation or whatever it is, it actually impacts the collective population.
Wow.
Unbelievable. And so the premise was, if we could even just get 1% of every city to meditate on a regular basis, I have goosebumps right now. 1%. I
got to really think about that, because how fascinating, right? So it's that kind of collective, I don't know if it's collective unconscious or if that's the tipping point, is the 1% mark.
Right.
I got to think about that more, but I love that I love that idea of, so
Yeah.
that to me also, what I love about that is it's doable, right? I can get
Mhm.
1% of anything to do it. So at least that's what I believe. So like, that's not, I have to get Denver to meditate. That's
Yeah.
1% have to meditate, you know? That's a
Eh,
very interesting. And I wonder if that's gotta be true in schools too, right? If you get a smaller percentage of the population in schools to start doing it, that's gonna impact the school too.
It's got to be true. Well, I think even your Florida gym teacher case kind of proves that even just that
Yeah.
1 0-hour class helped across the board the students' behavior and performance. The 100th monkey, have you heard that? The 100th monkey theorem, I think it is. And it was about an island. This is a study. This is an old study now. But it was about an island that they were using for like bomb tests, like testing different
Mm.
bombs on the island. It was uninhabited, except for by these poor monkeys. And so the monkeys are on the island, and they learned that the coconuts are not radioactive from the bombs because the coconut husk protects it. So
Mm.
once the monkeys could figure out, oh, I can crack open these coconuts and live off this food, it's not radioactive. Those monkeys obviously started to survive. Well,
Yeah.
island wide, there's monkeys all over, but the network acted that once the 10th monkey did it, and all of a sudden it's catching on in another little circle of monkeys. Once the 100th monkey figured out the coconut, that they could safely eat the coconut, instantaneously all the monkeys on the island had the knowledge of coconuts. Now, obviously, I'm butchering the story. There's more detail, but that's the premise of this monkey theorem.
That is fascinating. I'm gonna need to look that up, but it really does speak to creating movements, I think, in life and business, in well, really in everything. And in what you're trying to do. Have you seen the Derek Sivers? Do you know who he is? He's done a couple TED Talks. He's great. He was an entrepreneur back in the day. And he
Okay.
has a TED Talk about the first follower and how it's actually not the leader who makes change, is actually the first follower, and then like they bring the other people in. So I'll send it to you after. It's really interesting, but it kind of goes to what you're saying in a different way about like, how do you get mass adoption?
Right.
How do you make change happen? And you really make it happen by creating these movements, the 100th monkey or the first follower, more so than just being the lone crazy person off in the side trying to do it.
You're right, because if the second monkey hadn't followed suit, then the third monkey wouldn't have seen, and then the fourth,
Yeah.
it's like that ripple effect.
Well, it's kind of the 1% too you were talking about as well. Oh, I'm
Yes,
gonna have to look these studies up. Okay, I'm gonna look them up, and if I can find all of them, I'll put links in the show notes too for people so they
Oh,
can go see, or even
perfect.
articles about them because it's so cool.
So cool.
Okay, before we run out of time, let's just make sure we got all the life lessons because I hate
Yes.
open loops. So they were travel,
City.
live in a city at some point in your life, just because the experience is just so eye-opening,
So good.
along with travel, and yoga in schools,
Yoga.
and is there another one?
Retail or restaurants.
Oh yeah, retail, yeah.
They're for you.
I'm with that. I'm 100% with that one because I saw it in my kids. Love that one.
Yes,
Oh my God,
exactly.
I love those life lessons. Okay, before we go, the last thing I want to ask you is a little bit about your finding your why, and why do you do what you do? Yeah. Like, what's your why?
I love this topic. I teach this topic a lot for workshops for teachers and entrepreneurs because the why is like your mission statement. Like every business has a mission statement. Your why is your personal mission statement. What is your purpose? In yoga and Eastern philosophies, it's often called your dharma, your
Mhm.
purpose. And have you heard of a credo? Have you ever worked with a credo?
Mm-mm.
So a credo is basically like a short mission statement for yourself that embodies like the guiding principles that kind of define how you live your life.
Okay.
A really simplified example of a credo that I love is that I use the way that I do anything is the way that
Mm.
I do everything. And I just
Yes.
love that. It kind of reminds me like always show up and give your best, and when you do like you can just, I've done my best. And so finding your why is kind of all about that. It's like establishing your credo and working with that. And this can be in different areas. This can be professional, of course. It can be your identity as fill in the blank, a mother, a wife, husband, a partner, whatever it is. Oh my gosh, is that your cute little dog in the background?
Well, yeah, what just came by?
Oh, So cute.
I have big dogs and little dogs.
Sorry. Welcome to Ashton Brain. No matter what's going on around me, I'll be like, everyone stop. There's a dog.
I know. It's my life. Pet all the dogs.
Oh, me too. Another thing we'll be teaming up on in our future. And so finding your why is directly linked to your innate motivation and drive. And so getting really clear on your why, the why that you show up and do what you do, is the key to establishing and maintaining your drive, your passion forward. And so when I work with people who are finding their why, often this is teachers, right? They're going through a teacher training to become a yoga or meditation teacher. I do a lot of guided journaling. And guided journaling is such a powerful way to access a level of clarity. Kind of how I was explaining that with mindfulness earlier, it gives you that kind of pause from all the chatter. It kind of hones you in. And so some questions to ask yourself if you're listening and you're like, ooh, I want to find my why. I don't think I have it, or maybe it's not clear. The other thing about our why is it's kind of cyclical, right? Like you can be really clear on your why 1 year or 1 day, and then a couple years later or next kind of era, like we were talking about the eras in our life, like, who even am I? I don't know. I think a lot of new moms go through this.
Yeah.
So, lots of different. The point is, if you're wanting to establish or redefine your why, a couple questions you can ask yourself are, what are the 3 things that most light me up in my day-to-day? Questions like, if money were not an option, how would I spend my time? What have I always felt really drawn to and really lit up by, comforted by, safe with? What are those things? So starting that pursuit of inner knowing, right? Of getting a little deeper in like, who is Ashton? What does she stand for? What makes her tick? Like, this is fun. So I don't ever want finding your why to feel like daunting or overwhelming or like, oh my gosh, I'm behind. Somehow I'm wrong. No, this is the active process of peeling back those layers of yourself. Remember, like in middle school, those fun teen magazines where it was like, personality quiz.
Oh my God, I haven't thought about those in forever.
Seriously. But
let me ask you a question about the questions. And let me just share a story of someone that I know, because it kind of goes into the question I have.
Yeah.
Because I love those questions. So I've had a couple friends now who, if you asked them that question about like, what do you love? What lights you up? They'd tell you CrossFit. So what did they do? They went and bought a CrossFit gym and became gym owners and hated every moment of it, right? Became miserable for them, right? Then they hated CrossFit. They hated people. They hated owning a gym. Like it wasn't at all what they thought it would be.
Totally.
And I see that happen a lot with small business owners, actually. But I would contend, because that's not really the why. The thing that lights you up isn't necessarily the CrossFit. The thing that lights you up about it is, and just speaking for myself, right, not for other people, but is, it's the community, it's setting goals, it's achieving. So I kind of wonder, like, when you ask yourself those questions, what's the key to getting that layer underneath? Because sometimes I think we confuse the thing that we love as a hobby with our why.
Ooh. And this is where we're going to end. You'll have to come back for part 2.
And we're done.
So juicy. It's such a good point. And I can even personally relate, with having a yoga business. Has my relationship to yoga, the thing that most saved me in my teens, changed? Yes. Has it changed for the better? In some ways. Has it changed for the worst? Yeah. In a lot of ways, yes. And you are so right. If you do what you love, you never work a day in your life.
Yeah.
That can be true, but we need to be careful, because what you just said is so key. A hobby is not our purpose in life, and an interest or, a passion is not always going to be synonymous with our why. In fact, often it's not, because you're right. Like if I would have boiled it down for me, so my version of I love yoga, I'm going to start a yoga company. Well, what I loved, my why is not yoga. It's helping people.
Yeah.
It's creating as much impact as possible. So as much impact for me was, okay, I got to go online. I got to get this out to the world, of showing up and being of service, right? So offering my gifts and doing a lot of it for free and doing all of this because I'm passionate about creating that positive ripple effect. So my why is the impact and the ripple effect behind the vehicle that I'm currently using to fulfill that why, which is an online company that focuses on yoga and wellness.
I love it. I knew you'd have an answer for it. I knew it. I just wanted to hear you talk about it because I've seen time and time again where maybe we don't sit with ourselves enough to really answer the question of what lights us up. And I often find that it's not just a thing like yoga or CrossFit or whatever it is that you do, you know. Oftentimes that why we do what we do or why we love these things is actually a lot deeper.
And the best way to access that, because you are so right, is to be as specific as possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
So instead of being like, well, what are my top 3 favorite things in life? Ice cream. No, it's like, get really specific. So in the next year of my career specifically, what is my why to fulfill the purpose that I want to achieve? Okay, let's put a pin in that why question. What is the purpose that I want to achieve? And so then break that down, right? So if really like your main focus of the career is just to have as much time off with your family, then your why is going to actually be reflected in that, not as much as, oh, I love boating. So on my free time, I just want to boat as much as possible. That's great. Keep that separate from your why.
Yeah. And hopefully your why allows you to do that more because you're achieving whatever success looks like for you.
And so the final thing I'll say to that is I love a good guided journaling prompt series. But if you're doing this for yourself, maybe reverse engineer it from your ex. We've been talking a lot about we want to get to our X, we want to get to our Z. Well, so what would be the step back and then the 2 steps back and work backwards from there so you can really get clear? Because you're right. We can get in all this personal development work, we can get really mired and bogged down in the confusing elements of there's so much to look at. There really is a lot.
But I think even if all you do is spend a day, you know, or half a day with yourself trying to figure out your why, even if you don't change jobs, like you don't have to jump and be an entrepreneur to suddenly go after your purpose. Maybe it just changes how you see your job or how you do it or how you show up for your family or how you spend your free time. Or I don't know. I find it a really valuable, I love what you're saying because it's a really valuable exercise to do no matter your end goal. And even if you don't really know your end goal. And I think sometimes we confuse too, like for me to find my purpose and my why means I have to start my own business and be an entrepreneur and like be an influencer online. And I don't think that's always true too. There's a lot of amazing people who have incredible purpose inside large companies who stay at home, who like whatever it is.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just because that looks glamorous for one person doesn't mean that's going to feel glamorous for you. And I think that comparison trap is what makes so many people convinced that, yeah, I've got to do it all, be it all. I've got to be online. I've got to, you know, have this many followers. And we get so wrapped up in that. Like, will that matter in 20 years?
Maybe not.
Maybe not. But you know what will matter in 20 years when I look back is how much time was I able to spend being fully present and showing up and, you know, being of service, creating impact and living my life. Like those are the things that I base legacy and success off of. And so often my husband will be like, well, here we are again, another morning drinking coffee. All I do is wake up and drink coffee and go back to bed and do it all over again. What's the meaning of life? And I'm like, well, that's really deep and heavy in one sense.
Yeah.
But in another sense, it's what I tell you. It's when we have impact and we show up and we be of service and we find a quality of joy and satisfaction, then I think that's it. So the final thing I want to share really quick on this is if you're listening to this and you're like, ooh, I want to do these questions. How do I get started? Here's a really fun hack I love for this. Chat GPT.
The best.
The best. And wow, my therapist, so I can't take credit for this. My therapist had me do this. He had me ask ChatGPT to make me a series of questions to help me deeper dive my own purpose, why, all of it. And I gave it really specific directives. It came back with like pretty generic surface level questions for me and for my purposes. So then I told it, thank you. I've already been there though. I really, really want to deep dive. And the questions it spit out, I haven't gotten.
Oh, I'm going to try it.
Oh my gosh. I'm like, I think these answers might change my life. Truly. Like, I talk about technology actually being a supportive good thing.
This could be a whole different podcast. I'm a huge fan of ChatGPT and AI, and I use it as a brainstorm partner all the time. All the time. It just opens up your perspective and like gives you access to ideas that you wouldn't have had before. And I hadn't thought about it for that, but I'm going to try. I have all these things to try now. Actually, I'm going to do my legs up the wall. I'm going to be more mindful while I do laundry. And now I got to ask ChatGPT to figure out my life.
Perfect. Sounds like a great Wednesday to me.
Oh my gosh. Well, this has been absolutely amazing. I'll put all the links in the show notes, but tell people the best place to go to find you.
Absolutely. Please connect with me on social media. It is I am Ashton August. I am Ashton August. And you can also find me online, ashtonaugust.com. But I would most love for you to check out youaligned.com as well as You Aligned classes, because that's there to help you on your mind, body, life, wellness journey.
I love it. Well, Ashton, thank you so much. I really appreciate this interview because I think, first of all, it was fun, and fun is always good, but also you gave a lot of really tangible tips and ways to do things that people are going to be able to do immediately. And I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Good. That's my pleasure. And that was my purpose of being here today. So
it's all there. Go ask ChatGPT.
Exactly. Yeah, they'll tell you everything. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed our conversation and getting to know you more. I would love to come back for a part 2. And Thank you so much to everyone for tuning in. This is
this gave me so many answers, and now I have more questions.